Hello everyone, and welcome to the Study of Religions departmental seminar. This is our first one for this academic year. I'm Dr. Jenny Butler, and I'm introducing our first speaker today, who is doing, Alice Ahern, who's doing her PhD on the topic of shamanic tropes and neo-shamanism, examinations of pop culture forms and religious identities in Irish and globalized contexts. And today she's going to speak to us about the reclamation of feminine wisdom in the Irish neo-shamanic milieu. So I'll hand it over to you, Alice.
Okay. So so I'm going to start with the quote from scholar of alternative Celtic spiritualities and new religious movements, Marion Bauman, who states, that understandings of the terms Celt and Celtic have changed over time, from appellations based on archaeological, linguistic, geographical, or ethnic criteria to the rise of the idea of Celticity as a quality to be acquired and aspired to in a variety of ways for spiritual ends. So in my research, I'd be referring a lot to the idea of Celtic shamanism and Celtic spiritualities. So it's good to know the definition of how I'm applying the term Celtic. She also says, think Celtic spirituality and who or what do you envisage? Druids performing sunrise rituals at Stonehenge, the Book of Kells, harp music. The fact that there are so many possible responses is indicative of the breadth and complexity of contemporary images of who the Celts are and what might be meant by Celtic spirituality. She says modern Celtic spirituality thus takes a great variety of forms, including Celtic Christianity, Celtic paganism, Druidry, and Celtic influenced New Age. For many spiritual seekers, Celtic spirituality simply adds a particular flavour to their chosen form of religiosity, which is sometimes highly individualistic. So in 2020, Irish neo-shamanic practitioner Amantha Murphy published a book entitled The Way of the Shaman, an Irish shamanic path based on her subjective experiences as a shamanic practitioner and visionary, and the knowledge passed down to her from her grandmother. Murphy says that in Ireland, traditionally, women were the keepers of Irish shamanic knowledge and passed their knowledge orally down through the maternal line. The way of the Shaman is symbolized by a vision Amantha received of a woman, the tree of life, which is a symbol associated with shamanism, combined with a woman holding a chalice. So that's the woman, the tree of life, and the chalice there. This book, so according to Orla O'Connell, who transcribed the book on behalf of Amantha, this book combines the hidden lore of wise women with insights gathered in Amantha's own journeying. It still reflects Amantha's initial image, the woman, the tree, and the chalice. The first section, the woman, introduces us to the world of the Shaman, her roles and practices. It gives insights into Amantha's life and her bond with the grandmother who taught her. The second part presents the tree of life, symbolizing the three worlds. Lower world, the ancestors, that's the roots of the tree. The middle world, the reality in which we live, the trunk of the tree. And upper world, the spiritual world, which are the branches of the tree. Women's blood has always been thought to have magical powers. The chalice symbolizes the womb. The third part of the book is the chalice and the priestessing role of women, which means recognizing people, things, and situations and bringing them into the sacred. In the book, we see her qualifying how she understands and utilizes the term shamanic. This is important for the purposes of my study and research, as there is so much debate in academia concerning the use of the term shaman and shamanism. According to Ronald Hutton in Shaman's Siberian Spirituality and the Western Imagination, he says the word shamanism probably derived from the Tungusic word saman, meaning one who knows, and shamanism is used to refer to the indigenous religions of Siberia and neighboring parts of Asia. Therefore, there is debate among academics about utilizing the term to describe the beliefs and practices of other peoples of other regions and its use in new religious movements. However, due to the influential work of Mircea Eliade, Shamanism is now oftentimes used to refer cross-culturally to a medicine man or woman who engages in certain techniques for contacting the spirit world and healing members of their community. According to Graham Harvey, neo-shamanism, which is the subject of my research, is defined as a spiritual path among Westerners that utilizes aspects of indigenous shamanism and representations of shamanism in the past for personal and communal spiritual empowerment. Writing as a non-academic and a practitioner of what she describes as Irish shamanism, Murphy states that gradually I was finding out what the word shamanic meant. I understood that every indigenous culture has its own way of attuning and working with the earth, ancestors, elements, and elementals, its own way of connecting with spirit. All of these are loosely termed shamanism now. What Granny had taught me was part of that. It was strange because at home when she shared her knowledge, we did it quietly, privately, talking by the fire or out in the field. Then I met a group of shamans in Phoenix, Arizona. At first, I was shocked that they were so open. Where I came from, it was hidden. Interestingly, in an interview with Alia Cowan for the Shamanic Quarterly of the Foundation for Shamanic Studies, entitled Interview with an Irish Shaman, an unnamed Irish shamanic practitioner, an expatriate, who also stated that she learned shamanism from her grandmother, who hid her practices and shamanic experiences for fear of condemnation. He says, she was astounded that in America, shamanic practitioners can drum and journey without fear of reprisals from church and state. As she put it, for many centuries, my people could not listen to this. They could not hear these concepts. People typically respond with fear to knowledge which they cannot handle, and fear breeds violence and destruction. The woman also said that her grandmother, who had taught her shamanic techniques when she was a child, was suspected of having moments of insanity near the end of her life. Amantha Murphy now advocates that now is the time that this hidden, repressed knowledge can be retrieved and reclaimed from our ancestors through various shamanic means. Another example of an Irish woman who's being declared a shamanic figure by certain members of the Neo-Shamanic Milieu is the legendary Biddy Early. Biddy Early is a legendary example of a Banfassa, which is Irish for wise woman. Practitioners in the Celtic and Pagan milieu, such as Tom Cowan in his book Fire in the Head, Shamanism and the Celtic Spirit, and the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, on their website, enthusiastically champion Biddy as an example of a female Celtic shaman. Tom Cowan in his book outlines similarities between Biddy's experiences and that of a traditional shaman, such as undergoing an initiation in the form of the death of a brother, use of a power object in the form of her blue bottle gifted to her by the fairies, and an instance of soul retrieval with the patient and the ability she had to cure and heal. The scholar Nancy Schmitz, in her paper entitled An Irish Wise Woman, Fact and Legend, has also outlined how her methods did indeed have certain shamanic elements and techniques, but is reticent to qualify her as a literal shaman. What is interesting is that in the folkloric accounts of Biddy, versions of which were published by Lady Gregory, as well as the well-known Shanachie Eddie Lenehan, Biddy had to contend with the ridicule and suspicions of the local church, who dissuaded members of her community from seeking her healing services. Therefore, she lived a liminal existence where she was at once officially shunned by her community, who professed to practice a Catholic faith, but in practice was treated with reverence and respect by the same community who still believed and respected the old pagan ways in their day-to-day lives, and often went to her for healings, secretly defying the church's orders. Presently, in both the New Age and neo-Pagan milieu, there is a belief in the concept of the divine feminine and divine masculine. There is a belief that there is a return of the divine feminine occurring at this moment in time. In the New Age and neo-Pagan discourse, there is a concept that in the universe there is what is referred to as a masculine energy and a feminine energy. These energies are often referred to as either divine or distorted. The belief is that the divine feminine energy has been repressed for millennia, and thus at this time the feminine energy is rising to be reclaimed and re-established. The masculine energy, which is equated with and is thought to produce action, leadership, logic, productivity, science, and when distorted or overemphasized, they argue leads to control, aggression, hyperproductivity, hyperanalyticism, and a dismissal and repression of the intuitive, spiritual, emotional, mystical, and subjective. It is believed that the distorted masculine has been the dominant energy for millennia, and that this has resulted in a dysfunctional society, or what we would describe has resulted in a disenchanted society, as described by the sociologist Max Weber in his seminal theory. However, there are theorists who argue that Western Anglo-American society isn't experiencing a disenchantment, but is actually undergoing a type of re-enchantment. For example, Christopher Partridge, scholar of alternative spiritualities and new religious movements, states that he believes the West isn't becoming less religious, it's just simply becoming differently religious. The theory of re-enchantment or resacralization occurring in modern society has also been explored by scholars such as Peter Berger, Paul Heelis, and Linda Woodhead. However, these concepts of the divine feminine and divine masculine, and the idea that there is currently a resurgence and balancing of the feminine energy on the planet, seems to be strongly influenced by the goddess movements that arose in the 1970s, with origins reaching as far back as the turn of the century, influenced by the work and theories of various theorists. One of the most influential being the archaeologist Mariha Gimbutas, who theorized that the existence of ancient matrilineal or matriarchal goddess worshipping societies. Generally, goddess movements and goddess spiritualities are found in the neo-Pagan milieu, but can also influence other alternative New Age or cultic practices. Adherents and practitioners believe in and practice rituals that invoke the goddesses that hope to reinstate the importance of the goddess and the feminine in response to what they perceive as a male-dominated society. Goddess spirituality can be seen to strongly influence and inform the practices and teachings of prominent figures in the Irish pagan and shamanic milieu, for example, in the works and practices of Amantha Murphy, Karen Ward, Dolores Whelan, and many others. According to Murphy, the way of the shaman is the woman's path into the ancient Irish mysteries. It is a blend of our ancient shamanic teachings and the women's mysteries, which include rites of passage and the rituals and ceremonies that hold and sustain us throughout life. It also includes priestessing, which means recognizing people, things, and situations and bringing them into the sacred. According to Dolores Whelan, a prominent and influential practitioner of Celtic spirituality in the Irish milieu, she says, "What is most needed now on our planet is the strong and clear preserve of the feminine energy in all its manifestations. The past few thousand years of patriarchal culture has damaged the ability of both men and women to access and value the feminine, resulting in a distortion of both the true feminine and masculine energies. Women in particular need to reconnect with their true feminine energy, embrace it fully, and allow it to influence their daily lives." So scholars such as Robert J. Wallace and Jenny Blaine note that in Celtic and Northern shamanisms, particularly, embrace and emphasize the shamanic practice of calling on and reconnecting with ancestral spirits. This is a feature that differentiates these types of shamanisms from Michael Harner's neo-shamanism, known as core shamanism, that tends to focus on the individual and the individual's experience. So Michael Harner is a former anthropologist who has become one of the most well-known and well-published neo-shamans since he published the book entitled The Way of the Shaman in 1980. It's a book which scholar of shamanism's Robert J. Wallace called the Bible of neo-shamanism. Harner promotes shamanism as an accessible set of techniques, and he also teaches courses and workshops. He has popularized shamanic techniques and terms such as shamanic drumming, shamanic journeying, power animals, and rattling. Criticism has been leveled at core shamanism as appropriating and decontextualizing shamanism. As Wallace has noted, a common criticism of core shamanism is that it is focused on the individual while discarding the shaman's role as part of the community, the shaman's standing in that community. But Wallace notes that Celtic and Northern shamanisms, or neo-shamanism, while simultaneously acknowledging cross-cultural similarities, as is on vogue for the current new age of cultural neo-shamanic milieu, are more concerned with rediscovering and reclaiming what they believe to be lost or hidden indigenous knowledge that is unique to that land and people. So in the Irish context and in the wider Celtic Shamanic milieu, the alleged current re-enchantment of modern society is seen as occurring through the reclaiming and retrieving of this repressed and discarded lost indigenous knowledge. This ancient knowledge is believed to be retrievable through contact with our ancestors or through our own DNA, which holds this knowledge. It can also be retrieved through visits to sacred sites and landscapes, which also hold this ancient spiritual knowledge. Therefore, it is believed that this reclamation will lead to transformation, re-enchantment, and an ecocentrism which will heal the malaise of modern society. As Dolores Whelan asks, what is it from our ancient traditions that, if reclaimed, would enable us human beings to awaken to the magnitude and wonder of this world? And might this awakening allow us to live in a more conscious and connected way? Furthermore, as I outlined earlier, there is a particular sector that focuses on reclaiming this knowledge from our maternal ancestors. For example, Mantha Murphy goes into great detail about the reclamation of knowledge from our grandmothers and gives a description of the purpose of what she calls the grandmother circle. She says, the grandmothers give us strength. They hold us and guide us at times when we feel bereft or alone. They whisper in our ears. The grandmothers remind us of our nature and our interconnectedness with the land. They knew how to take what was needed and weave it. The grandmothers walked through life, experienced life, grew through life, and heard their grandmothers' stories. There is a continuity that in us that goes back to the beginning. We carry that in our DNA. We have a circle of grandmothers who are there to remind us of our stories and our songs and of the ancient wisdom. In this place, they help us to retrieve that information and bring it forth again. As we grow on in life, we can feel them close to us and can choose, if we wish, to allow them to work through us, to share the information that is needed for all of us to hear. So according to the discourse and practice in the Celtic and Irish Shamanic the Celtic and Irish Shamanic milieu, the repression of shamanic knowledge is a result of the repression of the feminine by a patriarchal society, as shamanic knowledge is symbolized by the feminine, as the feminine represents intuition, mysticism, the unknown, and the land. Therefore, the re-enchantment of society and the retrieval of a lost Celtic or Western shamanic knowledge is concurrent with the retrieval and reclamation of lost feminine wisdom. According to Cowan in Fire in the Head, male paranoia regarding the power of the feminine, combined with the Christian hatred for anything pagan, especially beliefs and devotions centered around the goddess, helped to explain why shamanism died out in Western Europe. The concept is being further disseminated in the Irish pagan milieu by practitioners such as Mantha Murphy, Karen Ward, Dolores Whelan, and many other Celtic spirituality practitioners, such as Mary Kennedy and Jen Murphy. Tom Cowan likens this re-enchantment of modern society to a type of collective soul retrieval of Celtic shamanism. He says, in a sense, we are currently retrieving the soul of shamanism and are even now grafting it back onto the Western psyche. Perhaps the journeys into our shamanic heritage will lead us to a new wholeness, with ourselves, with each other, and with the earth. Shamans believe that the soul can become fragmented due to traumatic life experiences. So soul retrieval is the shamanic process whereby these pieces are reclaimed and restored. Soul retrieval as a concept and technique was popularized in the Western context by the author Sandra Ingerman, an influential American neo-shamanic author and practitioner. and it was popularized by the publication of a book called Soul Retrieval, Mending the Fragmented Self, published in 1991. Interestingly, Ingerman specifically relates the process of soul retrieval to the feminine. She says, "At the beginning of each session, I will rattle as I pray to the Great Mother, the feminine aspect of spirit, to help me bring the soul of my client home." So this is the prayer she reads out. "Mother, one of your children wants to come home. Help me bring her back to you so that she can take her rightful place on earth." Tom Cowan argues that the women of the well of Arthurian legends is a metaphor for the current soul retrieval of Celtic shamanism. He says, "The Grail quests and the perilous adventures of Arthur's knights are about soul retrieval. For the woman of the well or her cup will restore the fecundity of the land, the king's health, and the adventurer's sense of self." The belief in Celtic shamanism, posited by Cowan, and in Irish shamanism, posited by Amantha Murphy, that the soul of shamanism is inextricably linked to the feminine, and that currently the soul of shamanism is being rebirthed in Europe, means that incorporating the ethos and practices of goddess spiritualities is a natural fit. According to Murphy, the knowledge that is being reclaimed as a woman will help bring an energetic balance to the earth. She says, "The Shavan path is a way of reclaiming all that we are, bringing back the Shavan, the yes woman, and those memories that lie in our DNA. The way of the Shavan is not just a personal part of our lives, it also holds the balance of the weave. As we grow and open, we bring that into the weave of the earth." In June 2021, Celtic shaman Dr. Karen Ward uploaded a YouTube video entitled "Reclaiming Our Well-Water Maidens," exploring how the symbolism of the legends and myths surrounding well-water maidens relates to modern women on an individual level. She notes how wells play an significant role in Irish society due to their numbers and the sacredness that they are still treated with, especially in the Christian faith. According to Ward, these maidens and the wells they tend to, in myths and legends, represent nourishment, nurturing, flow, and service. She believes that by us reclaiming our own inner well-water maidens will ultimately lead to what she says is our empowerment to be in union and harmony with all that is. She also notes how in Ireland, wells are associated with the goddesses Boan and Bridget. She delves into the myths surrounding Boan and the Well of Wisdom, where Boan is forbidden from approaching the well by her husband Nectin, and that only Nectin and his cupbearers are allowed near it, they're male. And however, Boan defies Nectin's orders and approaches the well and walks around it counterclockwise 3 times. As a result, the well water gushes up, hits Boan, disfiguring her, and sweeps her into the River Boyne, thus explaining how the River Boyne receives its name. Karen's reading of the myth of Boan and Nectin's Well of Wisdom is that Boan reclaimed the well from being the sole property of men, and that as a result, the water, which is a substance associated with the feminine as well as the unconscious, rose up to meet her and dismembered her, with symbolizing how she merges with the river and becomes one. Dr. Karen Ward is a key figure in the Irish Neo-Shamanic Milieu, having established a Celtic Shamanic school called Slíon Cree with her partner John Cantwell, and published prolifically on Celtic shamanism. Furthermore, she has a strong and widespread media presence. She is also the founder of Moon Mná, an offshoot of the Slíon Cree, which promotes Celtic goddess spirituality, specifically aimed for people interested in the feminine and goddess spirituality. Well, that's Karen, that's the website if you go to moonmná.ie. And here she says, It is my sincerest desire that the wisdom of the sacred island gifted to Moon Manaw, Irish goddess rites, awakens the Celtic soul seed within every woman who hears the call to join our circles. She says, I have always loved the archetypal energies of Grandmother Moon, and combined with a yearning to sit in Irish-themed women's circles, I founded Moon Manaw in 2009. My heart beats with the rhythm and energy of this ancient land, which I combine with my passion for the rise of the divine feminine, equal but different to the divine masculine. On the website, she asks, do you hear the call of your Celtic soul to commune with the energy of the moon and embark on a sacred journey to contribute to the rise of the divine feminine? She also recently announced that she is in the process of writing a book entitled Goddesses of Ireland, Ancient Wisdom for Modern Women. So, Moon Manaw, she offers, there you go, that's a snapshot of the website. It also says, oh yeah, she offers courses in a Moon Manaw Circle Facilitator training, which she calls the Goddess Spiral of the Year course, Moon Ritual self-ceremony, and monthly lunar gatherings. The school also offers a wide range of Celtic feminine inspired merchandise. Such as the Moon Manaw Diary, and you can also purchase Sacred Ireland Celtic Moon Oracle cards and Celtic inspired jewellery. There are a myriad of other practitioners in Celtic goddess spirituality in the Irish pagan milieu, such as Jen Murphy, who runs the Celtic School of Embodiment and calls herself a feminine embodiment coach, mythologist, and anthropologist. On her website, which if you go to Celtic Embodiment, she says, we remember the story of our sovereign power through the echoes of our mythical ancestors. My purpose is to bring the voices of Celtic goddesses, warrior queens, and wise women into the bodies of contemporary women to activate the memory of this power. Returning to the importance of wells in Celtic goddess spirituality, Dolores Whelan argues that it is the archetypal energy of Bridget who is associated with wells and also with poetry, healing, smithwork, and particularly midwifery. She is the goddess of fertility. Whelan believes that her nurturing energy must be utilised to usher in a new re-enchanted era. She says that people who resonate with the Celtic path are being called by Bridget to midwife this new era into the world. The goddess Bridget is a pivotal figure in Celtic paganism and Celtic goddess worship, not only in Ireland, but globally. For example, the recently published book, In Bridget's Footsteps, The Return of the Divine Feminine, published in 2021, was written by an American author, Linda McFadden, who has published a book, a website where she uploads a blog and organises tours and pilgrimages of Ireland. As Linda herself writes, this latter-day Bridgetomania is accompanied by a deluge of Bridget-focused websites, books, conferences, pilgrimages, and visual art. It seems that the prophecy of Fiona MacLeod, put in Bridget's mouth, foretelling that she would one day return to the hearts of men and women, is now being fulfilled. Fiona MacLeod was a pseudonym employed by the Scottish writer William Sharp, who was involved in the Celtic Revival, also known as the Celtic Renaissance or the Celtic Twilight at the turn of the century. So he wrote this poem entitled The Gaelic Heart that refers to Bridget. Okay, I have it here. He says, I put songs and music on the wind before ever the bells of the chapels were rung in the west or heard in the east. I am Bridget of the mantle, but I am also Bridget, conception of the waves, and Bridget of the immortal host, Bridget of the slim fairy folk, melodious mouthed Bridget of the tribe of the green mantles, and I'm older than Friday, and I'm as old as Monday, and in the land of eternal youth, my name is Mountain Traveller, in the country of the waves is Greyhound, and in the country of ancient years, it is Seek Beyond, and I have been a breath in your heart, and the day has its feet to it that it will see me coming into the hearts of men and women, like a flame upon dry grass, like a flame of wind in a great wood. Marion Bowman has detailed the worship of Bridget as a symbol, goddess, and archetype of the divine feminine, the New Age and neo-Pagan Mecca of Glastonbury in her paper Authored Bridget in Avalon, Celtic Myth, Vernacular Religion, and Contemporary Spirituality in Glastonbury. So globally, Bridget is a figure for Celtic spiritualities and divine feminine. In the Irish context, Bridget as a figure and representation of feminine wisdom endured from pre-Christian goddess worship through to the modern era and Christian worship. Celtic scholars such as Pontius McCanna and Padraig Clancy note that many of her traits and qualities were transposed onto that of the Saint Bridget, who was believed to have founded the Abbey in Kildare. As Whelan notes, Saint Bridget was and still is a central embodiment of the divine feminine and is closely associated with Mary, the mother of Jesus. She is often known in Ireland as Mhuire na Gael, Mary of the Irish. So, together, Dolores Whelan and Karen Ward established the Bridget's Way Celtic pilgrimage, which runs for 9 days and begins at what is believed to be the birthplace of St. Bridget's, which is Faughart, County Louth, and finishes in Kildare, where she is believed to have founded her abbey. And it takes in many sacred sites of Ireland along the way. On the website, they claim Bridget's Way Celtic Pilgrimage was inaugurated in a moment of divine inspiration as a non-profit venture. Those who honour Bridget as a pre-Celtic goddess or Christian saint come to walk in her footsteps as a way to find peace, connect with her ancestors, and commune with the sacred land of Ireland. Dolores Whelan in particular argues that the current popularity of Celticism and interest in mainstream culture in anything that is termed Celtic, or what Marion Bowman did refer to as Celticity, reflects an innate subconscious knowledge of an ancestral past and contributes to the current spiritual reawakening and re-enchantment that is occurring at this moment in time in modern society. She says this present engagement with the Celtic soul through music, myth, literature and art may hold the seeds for the next full emergence of the Celtic consciousness in the world. The important questions to ponder now are, how can this already vibrant Celtic spirit, which has touched so much of the Western world through its music, literature and poetry, become a powerful agent for the transformation of consciousness within Western society? So, in Tom Moore's critically acclaimed films entitled The Book of Kells, it's not here. Oh, it's The Secret of Kells. There's that Song of the Sea, which was 2014, and the latest was 2020 Wolfwalkers. So in this, what is informally referred to by Moore as an Irish folklore trilogy, we see an example of an Irish cultural product which is most definitely making an impact on the international stage, promoting what Whelan termed the vibrant Celtic spirit. Having garnered nominations from the Academy Awards, Golden Globes, BAFTAs and Emmys, and perhaps at home, it is reintroducing Irish myths and legends and promoting shamanic themes to an Irish audience. As has been noted by leading scholars of Celtic spiritualities, Marion Bowman and Jenny Butler, mythology and folklore are extremely important in the creation and construction of a Celtic shamanic or a neo-Pagan identity. In her paper, Arthur and Bridget in Avalon, Marianne Bauman uses the term mythologies to describe how myths are utilised as a form of belief and identity creation. She calls Celtic pagans story dwellers as opposed to storytellers, emphasising how the reworking of these myths is fundamental to the practice of Celtic spiritualities. As has been noted by leading scholar of neo-paganism in the Irish context, Jenny Butler, in her paper entitled Irish Neo-Paganism, Worldview and Identity, Irish neo-pagans create their identity through playful and creative reconstructions of myths and legends, employing Victor Turner's concept of ludic capacity. To quote, she says, often this identity construction is a process of reflexively combining elements in a self-aware and playful way. André Drugers defines the ludic as the capacity to deal simultaneously and subjectively with two or more ways of classifying reality. So it's really about being able to be playful and creative. Moore's folklore trilogy also utilises a ludic creative approach to retelling Irish mythology to an audience who may or may not be familiar with the original myths. In these works, the feminine, through its representation of female characters, is equated with the otherworldly and spiritual. Furthermore, the feminine is also correlated with untamed and untamable nature and the elements. The final installment of the trilogy, entitled Wolfwalkers, contains the most shamanic motifs and tropes and most explicitly equates the feminine with nature, spirituality, eco-spirituality, and just a sense of wild untamedness, untamed wildness, more I should say. But I just clip here, it's just a little trailer.
I don't suppose you know much about the Wolfwalkers, do you?
That's it. Could people see it? Because I know
Yeah, I could.
okay, I don't know. So that's the conclusion of my presentation. Oh, there you go. That's all I've done.
Thanks very much, Alice. Has anyone any questions? We have about 8 or 9 minutes for questions.
Maybe I exist. How do I don't know how to.
Is it showing full screen for you?
Me? No. If I go here.
Try escape.
Just go there.
I have a question. You were talking about the book, the Way of the Shaman, by Murphy and O'Connell, and you were talking about the in relation to that book, the Banfasa, or the wise woman. Could you say a bit more about that? I wasn't sure if the authors or the shamanic practitioners that you were talking about in general, if they're conflating, if they're saying it's the same thing, this wise woman tradition and shamanism.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think it wasn't in Murphy and O'Connell's book. They didn't relate the band Faster or Bridget. They didn't relate to her. I just thought it was interesting because they were like Tom Cowan, who wrote about Celtic Shamanism, did specifically refer to her. And I know I was saying the Order of the Bards and Ovates and Druids, like when you go onto their website, they use her as an example. So it is interesting that certain people are pushing her forward as this image of, they were calling her a shaman, but it's interesting they're not Irish though. So like Tom, I think is American, and then they're British, isn't it? The Order of the Bards. So yeah, it's just interesting how in the wider they are pushing her, like in the wider Celtic milieu, like globally they're pushing her, but Amantha didn't specifically. So I haven't found any Irish practitioners who have conflated Banfassa with the shamanic, but it's just an interesting thread to go down and see how they do conflate different traditions and claim it.
Thanks for explaining further. I think Nita was the next.
Yeah,
question.
hi. Thanks, Alice. I've always been interested in the feminine. I have some work. I mean, I haven't written, but I'm very interested in that. But I'm just wondering two things. If I can have a list of your references that you were talking about, all the books and the authors of which are kind of new to me. And the second was I have been, personally looking for connections between the feminine and Irish mythology and its connection to, is she a feminine, is it a feminine aspect which is very nature oriented, or, something like linked to ecofeminism, for example? So is the Irish feminine an ecofeminist, for example? I mean, to put it very crudely.
Yeah, I think there is a bit an emphasis on the land and how the feminine is a representation of the land. So by reclaiming the feminine, we will reclaim an ecocentrism. So yeah, is related to that idea of an ecofeminism, like that. By reclaiming this feminine knowledge, we will reclaim this knowledge of the importance of the earth. So it's this shamanic idea that the earth, like I was saying, Mantha, she's talking about that we're all part of a weave. So everything being interconnected and our connection to the land. So it's by losing the feminine, we lost that knowledge that we are interconnected with the land. And that's why there is a destruction going on this planet. So it's very similar, is a similar vein of ecofeminism, but maybe from a different perspective of it.
Sorry, yeah, thanks for that. And I just wondering, I had a quick look at the UCC library. I don't see Amantha's book in the library, so I'm just.
Oh yeah, it's not an academic book, but I'll send you the reference.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for that. Yeah.
I think Elizabeth is the next question. You're on mute, Elizabeth. I don't know if you're talking or not. We can maybe move on to Amy and come back to Elizabeth.
Hello, lovely job, Alice. Nice to meet you. So I have a quick question about how in the sources you're reading, the Native Irish sources versus US versus if you're seeing any difference or any tensions between sources coming out of Ireland and how they're approaching the divine feminine and and the US, and then you're talking about the British bardic tradition, because there is the colonial, some colonial linkages there and things like that. So I'm just wondering if you're seeing any resistance from Native Irish practitioners.
No, from the Irish practitioners I've studied, it seems to be it's a very similar idea. So like I was saying about Dolores Whelan, she's practitioner, but like she actually moved to America, I think in the 80s. Well, anyway, she says she started her spiritual journey in California, so she's kind of into all aspects of kind of maybe New Age and just different modalities and different teachings, and she brought that back. And so it seems like a lot of people in this milieu, from who I've researched so far, have the same overview, this idea, that we're all, it's just this, it seems to be this global teachings that infuses everything. So, very influenced by different aspects of the New Age, and so it seems very similar at the moment. I haven't noted any kind of tensions or differing in what I've studied. Like there's probably other sectors that would be, but they wouldn't be into the rise of the divine feminine, because that as a term does seem to be diffused over general global pagan and New Age teachings. So people who are into that. Yeah,
that tension is so interesting to me. Like where it amplifies political things, and where the divine feminine and shamanism is used to almost depoliticize.
Yeah,
in a way. Very fascinating.
Yeah, that's
thank you.
And we have one final question from Elizabeth. She wanted to ask about the term shamanism as opposed to priestessing in relation to her own research, because some goddess feminists don't believe in the afterlife, and shamanism seems dependent on navigating the other world. So,
okay, that's really interesting. I'll have to look into that, because I'm not sure. I just took that quote from Amantha herself, so I haven't researched in depth priestessing. So that is very interesting. I'll have to actually get that information off Elizabeth and then use it myself.
So thank you so much, Alice, for your presentation. So I will stop recording now.